Almost 1 in 4 cars that crash today, they never get repaired. They just get scrapped.
I got a call from Liberty Mutual saying, hey, we're gonna total your car. And I was like, for a fender? And it didn't make sense to me because I'm like, this is just an easy fix. I mean, there's nothing complicated about it.
That's a record, about 24% of all insurance claims now. And at the same time, the number of cars getting repaired dropped by nearly 10%.
Struggling to turn the page on a collision with their insurance company over that punctured tire, banged up bumper, and pressure to give up Barry's 2007 Lexus hardtop convertible.
We really felt like that we were being bullied.
If you've got a car that's worth $5,000 and it's going to be $7,000 to repair it, that's an instance in my shop that I would decline to do the repairs.
And here's what makes that so strange. According to S&P Global, cars today last longer than ever.
But another factor is that the vehicles made today, and really in the last 15-20 years, are more reliable and they last longer.
The average car on the road is now almost 14 and a half years old.
That's a record high for the United States.
One Ford Explorer with 213,000 miles under the hood.
And a modern engine can run arguably 200,000 miles with a basic maintenance. Let's just accept it. It's very tough, but let's accept it. The body and chassis are good. The engine is good. So if the car is still good, why is it being thrown away?
Somebody's tired of their car. They trade it in. It's no longer something that they want to drive around. It goes to an auction process, and eventually it winds up at an auto recycler.
Because somewhere along the line, the car stopped being something you fix and became something you replace. It became disposable, and it didn't happen by accident. Interestingly enough, it's almost 100 years old, and it started with General Motors. Back then, Henry Ford dominated the US market with the Model T.
The T was revolutionary, the T was practical, and the T ran everywhere.
He built it to last, sold cheap parts, even printed repair manuals. He wanted you keeping that car forever.
Want to construct some kind of a machine that will last forever. It does not please us to have a buyer's car wear out or become obsolete. We want the man who buys one of our products never to have to buy another.
And people actually did. So by 1924, GM had a problem. Almost everyone who could afford a car already had one, and it still ran fine. The car market was about to be saturated. A GM boss named Alfred Sloan found the fix.
That GM existed not to make motor cars, but to make money.
Every year he changed how the cars looked, so your perfectly good car suddenly felt old next to the new one.
He called the constant upgrading of product, deliberately designing vehicles to either break down or feel outdated within a predictable period of time.
He even lined the brands up like a ladder, from cheap Chevy all the way up to a fancy Cadillac. So you'd keep trading up as you made more money to show off your higher social class.
Establishing the ladder of success as one of the most effective marketing strategies still used today.
Critics called it planned obsolescence, but his trick was only in your head.
Many people have heard of planned obsolescence and how manufacturers reduce product lifespans so that consumers will buy new ones more often than ever before.
Your old car still ran, and you could still fix it.
1998 Honda Civic with almost 200K on the odometer, and she counts her savings every day.
Thousands and thousands of dollars.
By not getting a new car.
Correct, by not getting a new car.
Any mechanic could get the parts and keep it alive for years.
Original transmission?
Yes.
Original engine?
Yes.
And it still works.
Sloan made you want a new car. He never forced you into one. That's the line today's car makers cross. The car you buy now isn't really a machine anymore. The thing running it is software.
Today, software controls pretty much everything in your car.
Lines of code that decide how it drives, what it can do, even how safe it is.
Primary experience and function of the vehicle is driven through software.
They call it software-defined vehicle, or SDV. Cars are literally computers on wheels now, and they borrowed from the tech industry.
With software-defined vehicles, embedded systems such as ADAS, and elegant infotainment systems.
The software-defined vehicle is kind of a buzzword right now in the automotive sector.
We buy the hardware, in our case the car, and we should pay for the software to run it, preferably every month. In this way, car makers can monetize continuously.
And it allows you to do a software update that improves your whole fleet all at once. And if you can charge for upgrades, because you're adding functionality. Now you basically are monetizing it over a much larger number of vehicles.
We are now in the middle of a huge shift from a traditional car to software-based vehicle or SDV. In simple words, we are shifting from the car ownership to usership. Not only are the brand new cars different, but also the whole automotive industry is forced to align with it.
Because when we first got into automotive, because we believe that in the future the car is going to be largely software.
For example, think about the junkyard. For 100 years, when a car got wrecked, its good parts didn't die with it. Someone at the salvage yard pulled them out. A door, a headlight, a sensor, and sold them cheap. One dead car literally kept a dozen living ones on the road. That's how the regular people afford to fix their old cars. Quietly, in the background, the junkyard held the whole thing together. Now, watch what the software shift does to that. Today, a lot of parts come with their own serial number, locked to that one specific car. The computer only trusts the exact parts the car left the factory with, which is called parts pairing, also known as component serialization or VIN-locked.
Yeah, you can't do that, not with new cars at least anymore. And if you tried, you'd probably crash your car's electronics and brick the whole thing.
So your mechanic can use a perfectly good parts from a matching car.
OEM original Volkswagen parts, have all the latest diagnostic equipment and Volkswagen specialty tools that are best to serve your Volkswagen's needs.
And the car reads the serial number, it's obviously different from the old one, and simply refuses to use it. Then you'll see warning lights, lost features.
We and the other owners had an issue where the automated door handles wouldn't always pop out when you unlock the door the way they were supposed to.
Sometimes the part just won't work at all until the dealership itself unlocks it. So in fact, the chip fix is gone. You are forced to buy a brand new parts from the dealership at their price. The software doesn't just change the new cars. It's reaching all the way back and almost killing part of the automotive industry. It's switching off not only the aftermarket parts, but also the OEM parts from the other cars in the junkyard. Analysts forecast that widespread adoption of SDVs will dominate 90% of the market by 2029, a shift expected to drastically shrink traditional automotive product life cycles down to approximately 4 years. That's so unbelievable. And the parts aren't the only thing that they locked. They locked the communication with the cars too. A few years back, starting around 2018, Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, now Stellantis, added something called a secure gateway or SGW. It's basically a digital lock sitting between your mechanic and the car's computer. Before this, any shop with a normal OBD2 scanner could plug in, read what's wrong, clear a warning light, or tell a part to do its job.
Without it, it would be virtually impossible to find out some of this information.
In the past, Sutherland says he's had to pay thousands to gain access to this kind of information. He's hoping easier access leads to lower costs for customers.
Simple, everyday job, right? But everything has changed. Now your independent mechanic plugs in that same scanner and gets a message that says SGW access denied.
Why they did that, it's a very stupid.
You could not really work on a modern car today.
And with more tech controlling your car, from lane assist to auto braking features, diagnosing a problem can be a lot more complicated than just looking under the hood.
To get back in, his shop has to sign up with a third-party company Stellantis picked, buy the approved tablets, pay a yearly fee, and stay connected to the internet the whole time of the fix.
All Autel tablets can be registered with AutoAuth and used on these late model Stellantis and Nissan vehicles,
while the car quietly writes down who opened it and when. So the local mechanic can still get in. He just has to pay a subscription fee, ask permission, and be watched while he does it. And all of these extra costs add up and should be paid by the final customer. We should pay for it. And the story still doesn't end here. The mechanics and manufacturers got involved legally with something called the Right to Repair Act.
Right to repair law. Right to repair law, which is taking effect today.
So what is the right to repair exactly? It's a simple idea. If you own the car, you should be able to fix it or take it to any shop you trust instead of being forced back to the dealer.
News Entertainment's Caroline LaCour spoke with people in the automotive industry on how this might affect business.
The car makers didn't want that. Their reason was safety and privacy, but the real reason was money. Sharing access would mean sharing that business with the little guy down the street.
The manufacturers to release this information to us so that way we have the ability to do exactly what the dealerships do.
This is a call for certain industries to allow consumers or other repair shops to have access to certain parts without having to go to the manufacturer.
As cars become rolling computers, you have to have access to that wireless data if you're going to be able to work on the cars.
So they fought to keep the door shut. But here is where it finally turns the other way. After years of the door quietly closing, someone in charge pushed it back open.
Republican Congressman Warren Davidson of Ohio says this is an area where both parties find common ground.
I think we have the makings of a good bill and a clear majority that can pass if we can get it to the floor and get a vote.
Just recently, President Trump signed an order backing the right to repair.
President Trump signed an executive order that gives consumers more options to fix their cars using aftermarket or third-party parts,
telling the government to make sure regular people and independent shops can work on their own cars again without getting punished for it.
Lower the price of your car is going to lower the price of fixing your car.
That if you get caught fixing your tractor, they bring you to jail. So I promise, Ken, if you ever get caught fixing your tractor or truck, I will give you a pardon.
For once, the decision went to mechanics and the people instead of the car makers. But we still have the problem with the car itself. Say the mechanic wins the fight and finally gets into the car. Doesn't matter because the car itself is now built so it can't be fixed. A good example of this is Gigacasting and Megacasting revolution pioneered by Tesla.
So this is really an open game at the moment.
The Gigapress is Tesla's superpower. The reason Tesla is the super brand that it is.
Here's what changed. An old car body was hundreds of small steel pieces, bolted and welded together. Crumple a fender and a shop just cut out the bent part and welded in a new one. Cheap, easy, fast, and done. But now, car makers pour huge sections of the car as one single piece of aluminum.
The process is, fundamentally, simple. You fill a high-pressure mold with a substance, such as molten aluminum, and form a cast. After some cutting and finishing, the part is ready to go.
You can use less material to get the same amount of strength because you can customize the shape of it to be most advantageous for the loads that you're trying to carry.
NBC reached out to several automakers. However, most said their plans for megacasting are in the very early stages.
And glue the body together with a bond that's meant to never come apart. It saves them money on the assembly line, but hit that one big casting hard enough and there is no cutting it out and welding it back in. Cast aluminum doesn't work that way. You replace the whole giant piece, and a lot of the time, that costs more than the car is worth. That's why when an EV has an accident, most of the time they write it off instead of fixing it.
Modern vehicles are incredibly expensive to repair. It's not just bumpers and headlights anymore.
Going to a dealership when their EV battery has suffered some sort of problem, being charged £20,000-30,000 to rectify that. Why is that? Why is that happening? Why are the manufacturers charging people so much money?
This is true for ICE cars too. For example, think about the safety tech, the cameras, radar, and sensors behind automatic parking. They sit in the bumpers, the mirrors, the windshield, exactly where the car gets hit. So a little parking lot bump that used to mean a cheap bumper now means replacing sensors and recalibrating them, often over $1,000 for a scrape. Add a cracked battery pack or a bent casting and the fix quietly climbs past what the whole car is worth. So instead of fixing the car, they scrap it. As I mentioned, we are in the middle of a huge shift from the traditional car ownership to new era of car usership. Fixing and repairing cars doesn't financially make sense anymore. What do you think? Drop in the comment section below. I'm Saeed, you've just watched Carisma. Thanks for watching and I will catch you up in the next one. Thank you.